Line fam and welcome, Petar.
Thank you.
First is no one ever knows this besides obviously you. This is your first podcast ever. Not that you've never been invited, you've been invited many, many times, but I think first would love to hear why you signed up and said okay to this, even there's been no force in any way, no physical, emotional force. What's kind of motivating you to say yes to this first?
Okay, it's basically a new experience,
Okay.
and like you're a good friend, and also I think like the podcasts that you've been doing were good.
Thank
So,
you.
like I think it's getting out of the comfort zone in a good way to do something that I believe I'm going to do multiple times. So
Yes.
you might as well start.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, great. So I think first is would love to share to everyone what we're going to be obviously discussing.
Mhm.
And it is about upgrading or up level friendships. So as you grow as a person, as you're, leveling up in your life and your career, you're going to slowly start to notice that some of your old relationships just can't keep up. And sometimes you may notice, maybe painfully, that some relationships just no longer can come with you anymore. And Petar and I have been through a year, different years, but we've had this experience. So I actually thought about you immediately because I thought like, wow, there's so much that you've learned from your journey that I think you could share with everyone. And I think secondly is as you're up leveling, yes, there are relationships that will fall off, but there's also a lot of relationships you will gain and that you will strengthen, right? So this whole episode is about how do you decipher what's a genuine connection you could continue maintaining and growing, and what is a relationship that you just kind of should let go and let it go on a different path while you go on a different path. So without further ado, Petar, would you like to dive right in?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
So I think the first thing I want to talk about with you is when to know when it's time to let go. When sometimes like it is, it could be a friendship that you've had for so long, but how can you detect, how can the audience detect when it's no longer a genuine relationship, but it's transactional? So
Yeah, so I thought about this, like
yeah,
since
of course.
you sent me the
Prompts,
questions,
yeah.
and I don't think it's the moment of realization that, like it becomes transactional. I
Yeah.
think it's the moment of realization when you're thinking about like, what was it always transactional, or was it a
Yeah.
genuine friendship from the beginning?
Okay.
And I think, like people who are optimistic usually come to the table with, like assumption that other people are good, other people are
Yes.
well-intentioned,
Hmm.
and then you start talking to people with that approach, um, and as long as they don't prove you otherwise,
Mm.
you keep on investing in that friendship,
Yep.
relationship, whatever it is. And then at some point there is friction in any relationship.
Yeah.
There is friction, like that's just normal way of
Yeah.
humans interacting. But at that point, when the friction becomes like, high enough that you have to ask yourself that question, why am I even friends with this person?
Mm.
Or why is this person in my life? Uh, then it becomes, like a little bit of a struggle. And I think we are commonly not disciplined
Mm.
in
That's
terms
true.
of how we approach that.
That's true.
Um, the way that I thought about it, and especially, like given the, like the experience over the last couple of
Yeah.
years, where
Which we will dive into. This will be fun.
yeah, this will
Maybe,
be very
yeah.
fun.
Maybe a little bit. I'm gonna go into details. I know you're more of a private person, but I think, yeah, go on. We'll dive into it. We're not gonna leave anything unturned.
Yeah, I think what I've learned from the experience, because I had to either let some friendships, like go away, or I had
Yeah.
to make some friendships into acquaintances
Yes.
and, like kind of like distance myself to a
Yes.
certain degree. And what was really helpful was having, I wouldn't say it's a framework, but kind of like a way to come to a conclusion
Okay.
that I'm okay with, and the way to come to a conclusion that's in line with my gut feel as well,
Hmm.
which, like I kind of like learn to trust a little bit more over time.
Love it.
Um, but I think, I thought about this, like I said, since you sent me the prompts,
Yeah.
the questions that you were going to ask, and and then it's like, what do you ask yourself when you're in this
Hmm.
situation? What do you ask yourself? I think like the first thing is this a good person?
Mm.
Is this a person with a value system that I think is, close to mine. And I think that's how we usually define a good person, you know, like value system that's in line with what I think is right or wrong. Whether it is right or wrong, that's a completely different thing. But that's how we perceive it. So then you ask yourself that, and obviously it's not easy to know what is the value system of another person, right? Because people signal one thing, they do something else, and you know, like there is always a little bit of a disconnect, and there is a, you know, like how people want to see themselves versus how they are. So what I started doing is asking myself, like, okay, I have a situation with a friend, they do something that I find very disappointing or disapproving, and then I ask myself, like, okay, is this because the person has this value system and these values that are, you know, so out of tune with mine? And one way to test that is to ask yourself, would any of my other close friends do something similar? Would I be surprised if any of my other close friends would do something like that? That's one angle. The other angle is to look at that person and say, would that person do that to their brother, sister, very close friend, to know where you are in the view of that other person? Because you may perceive that that person considers you a close friend, but they consider you, you know, a useful friend. Which is a very different approach.
Very different approach.
So then you may be sharing things which are, you know, like very private, but like you actually should not be sharing. And at these points, it's very valuable to have very close friends who you really trust, who you know are aligned with your value system. When you go and speak with them on these topics, they will help you discern. And just also hearing yourself say some things about like what was done, how it was done, it may help you literally crystallize your own opinion. And then after you do that, after you kind of like do that check, then you can say like, well, what's my gut feel? How did I interact with this person? When I interacted with them, how did they make me feel? Did I feel that there is hesitancy? Did I feel that there is something that is not fully shared or fully honest? Did I feel any of this? Or did I just feel like support, you know, like happiness for my successes? You know, like, did I feel like they genuinely care about me? They check in and everything. And you know, like that's how you can kind of navigate through that maze of like what decision is the right decision. Now here's the tricky part that I realized. You come to the decision and you're like, yes, let's say the decision is this is still a good friend. They just have this approach to these things. Like you and I had friction, right? Like
plenty of times. Every day.
But like, I don't think it's because of the value system or whatever. Like you and I have different personalities. Obviously, there is going to be friction. But I don't challenge my view on your values every time that happens.
Same.
But for you know, like for some other situations with some other friends or previous friends, I would ask myself, like, is this, you know, like, is this a friendship I want to keep investing in or not? If it's yes, you keep on going, perfectly fine. If it's a no, this is, I think, the hardest, the trickiest part. It's almost like it's as hard as for parents not to help their child, right? You still want to see the good in them. And you want to believe that they are really, really good people because you already invested so much. You shared some moments. And some of these moments were very genuine. The acceptance of the fact that, you know, like, yes, they can be amazing, but no, I don't want to keep investing. And then like absorbing and internalizing what you rationally know into an actual decision, into your approach going forward is, I think, actually emotionally painful. Because you have to kind of undo your view of a person to a certain degree. I'm not saying you should demonize anyone or, you know, like say like, no, they're a terrible person. Like, no, they're like just not the best fit for you as a close friend. That's fine. Then you move that out, and then the, you know, like the ripping of the Band-Aid or that emotional detachment is actually a painful process because it's a process of a loss. Going through that is hard. I think when you do that, you need to have the courage to say to yourself, like, no, I am going to let go of this friendship and move on. And when that happens, like obviously, like takes time, it's painful. It's just like going through a breakup, like it's never, I have never heard anybody say like, I had an amazing breakup. Like,
Yeah, can't
like
say.
really enjoyed that. Like it was so smooth.
Unless you genuinely didn't have such deep feelings. But if you did, of course, any
Yeah,
breakup.
but yes, like if you do not have like a deep connection to a friend, then like walking
Correct.
away is easy.
Yeah.
But if you have a deep connection, or you think you had a deep connection, or you really felt like that person is somebody you want to keep in your life, and then you have to retract that and basically say like, no, I'm actually detaching myself.
Yeah.
That part is obviously painful. Other
Yeah.
ones are not. Um, However, it does lead to a better outcome
Mhm.
for both sides because it removes future friction
Yeah.
because you have expectations of your friends, they have expectations of their friends, and it removes that future friction that is inevitably going to happen if you don't align on personal values.
Mhm.
And then also, even more important for yourself, it opens up space for other people who are going to come into your life.
Yeah. 100%. I love how, if you guys can't tell, he is clearly a Virgo. He thinks, I know you're not into signs, but very like logical, like step one, step two, and then the gut check, right? But I think with that said, the biggest thing when you were saying, I was actually, before you mentioned it, thinking how breaking up with friendships, for me, at least personally, has hurt more than actual breakups because you have so many shared memories with them. I think so. I always feel like it's never easy to your point, but like when you see that misalignment, trust it because like it's just showing you where you're going, where they're going, it's just like a different place, and that's okay, you know? And I love how you said like you don't need to demonize them. So I feel like there's probably like three standard deviation events where maybe that is warranted and that's fine, and you want to completely cut off, and that's fine. But other than that, like misalignment doesn't make that person a horrible person. It just makes them not a person for you anymore, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I love that. So I think few things I want people to think about in terms of how can you tell when it's time to let go of a friendship that you've been friends with for a while or however long it may be. I think first, the biggest telltale sign for me is when something's good happening in your life and you touch upon that and they're not genuinely happy for you and you can tell and they don't show up for you, right? Like say when you start your own business, you start another project of your own, or you had a really good something that happened in your career and your love life, right? They cannot genuinely be happy for you. And you can feel that, right? They might say on their face, like, oh, I'm so happy, whatever, but like you can feel something's off, right? Which is hence why, to your point, it takes time to really hone on to your intuition. I think I'm very blessed also that I have a sister that I'm so close with. And literally, because we share similar friends, I can tell when someone's no longer genuine when I watch their interaction with her. Because when I'm in it, right, I'm just kind of in the moment. I'm not really like analyzing. But when I can tell those similar friends and when she's had a great, like say she upgraded her career or something amazing happened to her love life, and that person that we're mutually friends with isn't like jumping up happy for her, for me, that becomes a red flag and I reflect, well, if they're going to treat my sister that way, how would they treat me? Or how have they been treating me? Right. And that's a first sign. Secondly, to your point about people, how close you want to have people in your life. There are times when people who are friends with you or been friends with you for a long time where they still want to be a part of your life. They still want to like catch up, but they want to be around it. But you have to ask yourself, what are the intentions, right? Like, for example, if there are people who are just constantly watching your stories and doesn't show up and doesn't like support you in any way, right? Or when you guys meet up, right? It's not really like deep conversations or it's not really like conversations that get you like a growth mindset, but it's more like extraction and just getting information from you. Are they really getting information because they care about you, or are they going to use it to gossip about you? And you can tell by the questioning, is it just more of them comparing themselves and using it as ammo to talk about you later, or they're genuinely curious about how you're doing? I think those are,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I want
No,
to
no,
add to that because like as you're speaking, I'm thinking like, and
yeah,
there's so many signals
let's
that
share
people
those.
do that.
Yeah.
I think easiest one is how they talk about their other friends.
Thank you. Oh my God, that's such a good
It's
sign. Yeah.
it's it's literally like if you hear them saying like, oh, my friend is saying this, but like actually she's completely different, or like that is a clear sign that very likely they're going to talk that way about you. I had a very funny situation.
Tell me.
It wasn't a personal friend, it was a friend's girlfriend at the time.
Okay.
And, like we were all kind of mingling in the same
Yeah.
circles. And every time I would meet them, she would kind of criticize all of our other friends to me.
Oh, great.
And I asked her at one point, like, if you're speaking this way about them, what are you
Mhm.
saying about me when I'm not there? And she told me like, oh, no, 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 like I speak only positive things
I
about you.
bet.
I love you. And
I bet.
I'm like, that sounds disingenuous.
Exactly.
Like
Have you said
it's
that? Oh my God, that's
well, I didn't
crazy.
say that sounds disingenuous, but like that's what went through my mind.
Yeah,
But like it's just hard to believe that somebody is like this way with everybody else, and
100%.
only with you they're so special that like
I
they're
agree.
it's if they're saying that with you they're out of character, you should kind of put a question mark on that.
100%. I even say, I know we're talking about friendships, but I actually apply that to people that you're dating and you're seeing you want to spend a life with them, right? The way men, to me, when I go on dates and men talk about their friends, or when I know way too much about this friend's life, that I'm like, I don't think you should be telling me that. I don't honestly think like, oh my God, I'm so special. Like he told me like all these secrets. I'm like, no, what the fuck else are you saying
And
to
you
other
don't have to
people?
use the nasal voice either.
No, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so cute. No, I think it applies to dating too. But yeah, I think to the point about honing on and figuring out if you're not really good about reading your gut and what feels off, like Petar mentioned, it really will be about taking time to like kind of figure out that gut feel and like learning about how to listen to. I would just say intuition is just a feeling. It's just a feeling. So if you just have to be better about letting yourself feel things versus logically walk through it. It's a gut feeling that you can learn and you can process versus thinking like, I'll give you an example. Say someone's like gives you a backhanded compliment, but logically speaking, what she's saying is a compliment. So you're logically being like, oh my God, like what's wrong? Like I have nothing to worry about. She was being kind to me. But then you're feeling when you leave that conversation, make you feel like small or nasty or it just didn't feel right. That is your intuition. So honing onto that's really important.
I have an
No, but
example
go ahead.
to add to that. Like
Yeah.
I was changing jobs. I was going from one bank to another,
Yeah.
and I was sharing that with some of my friends, who I believe my friends were
Okay.
my friends at that moment.
Okay.
And the one guy in the group says like, "Oh yeah, that's amazing, but like their stock compensation sucks. So like congrats, but."
Ah,
And I'm like, that is not a friendly
that
comment.
is not. But you catch it. That's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
example. Yeah.
Obviously, like you keep like as long as you keep your ears open
Yes.
and your eyes open,
Yes.
I think people signal so much.
Mm.
It's really whether we choose to pay attention to it. And I think we are our worst enemy in that sense, where we say, because we want this person to be amazing,
Yeah.
we choose to ignore what's very,
Oh, yeah.
explicitly in
That's
front
a
of
good
us.
point. I think it's really for people who always try to see the good in people. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. I also have this rule where I'm like, I don't write people off obviously immediately. I give people chances. I used to give 3. Now I give like 2.5. So
How do you define 0.5?
with what it's like off enough that I'm like, if it was the first thing, if it was like the first hit ever, I wouldn't even count it. But because you already had those 2 hits and then you give another offhanded compliment action, I'm like, I cut, right? Because I think there's an element of giving people grace because obviously everyone goes through different cycles of their life. It is really hard if say you're going through an amazing love life, right? And you're telling me all about your love life. And if I'm not fully confident and secure in myself, it's really hard to hear that if I'm having a shitty love life, right? So I think it's also giving people grace. My rule there is like, as long as someone's not genuinely like adding harm to you, they just can't show up for you, that's okay, right? I think it's more of like shitting on you or doing things that actually hurt you that
Or
make me draw
attempting to.
attempting to,
Yeah.
right? I think that's what causes me to draw back, but there has to be an element of grace to all of this. Okay, great. I think we've covered that pretty well in terms of how can you tell when it's time to let go of a friendship. Um, another one, I think you already hit on it, but tell me if there's anything else you want to add. how to gracefully remove people or take space from those who can't genuinely be happy for you.
So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this
Yeah.
question because I'm very direct.
Well, we love that. Go on.
So
Tell me, and then I will share some thoughts. Go on.
it's like, here's the list of things that disappointed me about you.
Right.
No, but like, look, I think you have to first ask yourself a question. Do I believe this is genuinely a good person? Um, that just has a slightly different value system to mine? Or do I actually think that this is, like not a high integrity person,
Right.
not a person that I want to have close at all,
Yeah.
and that I don't think that it's worth even investing into that conversation to
Right.
say like, hey,
That's a
like
good point.
I appreciate all the things that happened before and all the good things and all the good memories, but like I'm not going to invest anymore, whatever wording you use.
Right.
Do they deserve that conversation?
I agree with that.
My default before was absolutely share.
Yeah. You must know
You
how
have to
I
tell the
feel.
people. And there is a downside to that. And the downside is, like you may be just like giving people material to
Exactly.
to go and like use it against you in any way, shape, or form, or misconstrue your words or
Yeah.
whatever. On the other hand, you are in a way venting, and I think people want to vent out when they have some, like something to say, like kind of like to level the field. But really, again, and this like you and I had these conversations, like, do you need the other person to know what is like
Yes.
what do you first of all what do you get out of it, not just like and not in a materialistic sense, but like what are you going to get out of it? Are you going to have peace of mind?
Yeah.
Are you doing this to make them understand and to give them something that they're going to become better, or are you doing it because you think is like the like the thing you should do? And I had to ask myself those questions. And like sometimes it's just better to let things roll off on their own, rather than like having that active dialogue. But I think if it's a person you really think of as high integrity, it's better to give them a very soft way. And I'm saying that knowing that I don't give soft, like comments, but like it's better if you give it in a soft way and say like, look, like not about like you did this, but it's like this is how it made me feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was kind of the one that mentioned, well, like, hey, maybe not everyone needs an exit interview or a conversation. So but again, this is because my thing is, it was more of I want to protect your energy and I want to protect what's actually worth your energy. And really the leakage of information is where I just wouldn't want anyone to use that against you. Like you just don't know people's intentions, and like some people who are very like malicious or like have like a stinger, you don't want to activate that. Not that like anything is going to happen to you. I really feel that if you're a good person, you're always going to be protected, and I trust that. But it's like there's no need to add any of that like potential negative energy into your life. So that's helpful what you said. I think one point I was like, for me and how I kind of remove myself from relationships that are no longer a fit, I don't really actively do it. I think when it comes to how I live my life, I throw 150% of into present life. So I live here. So whatever is here, I'm just so focused on here. I don't really worry about the past. I'm not really any more like future planning things. I'm really present. So if you're not here, naturally the past is just going to fall off. So it's not like I have any like direct conversations with people. It's like if you're not just actively showing up in my life, you're just going to naturally fall off or take more space.
So in friendship terms, you do what have you done for me lately?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think the one thing that people, when I talk to a lot of people, especially clients who I would say, again, very kind-hearted. I would say it really more affects people who are creatures of habit. They believe in like long-term relationships. They want to preserve things. There is a little bit of fear of, oh my God, if I let these friendships go, what would I have? Like, I don't have anything left. Like, I grew up with them or I went to B school with them, right? I have to remind people, like, it's already not working, right? It's already not great. That's why you're feeling this way. So you really don't think any relationship out there would be better? Like how small and how lack mindset must you have you think this is the best I deserve? So just reminding you, like, if it's not working, it's not punishment. It's not a way to like create fear in you. It's just to say pivot. So when you get those moments, learn to pivot and just think bigger, think more open. And I would say, go do the things like, whether it's like a running club or if you're into art, like do the hobbies that you love yourself and you're going to find your people. So we're gonna
Yeah, I think like for me personally,
Yeah.
just like on a personal level, I generally don't have this fear of, like, well, how am I going to fill this gap
Right.
or whatever? Like I don't have a fear of walking away. I think that's like, it's healthy to be able to walk away
Yes.
from something that doesn't, like doesn't fit your life well.
Yeah.
I think it's more about like how do you process that after you walk
Good
away.
point. Yeah.
And one important thing which I learned from the last few years is that, like you're going to have to do after, like after you kind of process the main part of the pain and everything, you have to do the forgiveness part as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
To forgive, like, well, yes, this was great, but this was not great. And even if it's a, like somebody you think is a bad person or something, you should still forgive because, like you allow them into your life.
Yeah.
They taught you something new.
Yes.
You forgive and you move on.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was literally just today I do a morning meditation. I had to like forgive someone. I realized, oh my God, I still never forgave that person. I didn't call the person up. It was much more just like in my mind because it's like drinking when you're holding on to anger, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get hurt. You're just like hurting yourself. So I think that's a really good point. Next one is how to discern, now that we've kind of cleared up how to decipher when it's time to let go of an old relationship, how can you discern when a new relationship comes in, right? Because as you're elevating your life and you're growing, when you're shiny, you're going to attract a lot of people. You're going to attract a lot of people who are also shiny and people who want your shininess. So how can you tell the difference between someone that genuinely wants to grow and build with you versus someone who's more transactional in a new relationship? How can you tell? This is fun.
You and I had this social situation where we were both sitting at the same table with other people, and one person came in who, like I just met. You've met that person before, and they started giving me a lot of compliments, like, "Oh, I think you really did well in life. That's that's admirable, and this and that."
Yeah.
And I was very neutral to that. When that person left, you asked me like, "How were you so neutral?" And to me, that seemed very transactional because when somebody, I think it's a general kind of like, at least my impression with people, when they come off strongly with a lot of compliments to begin with about like how you're the best out there, you're amazing in every possible way, there is usually something behind that that they want to kind of, enchant you in a way.
Yes.
To make you feel like wow, and there is like kind of like a selfish, self-centered thing in receiving those compliments, which is like, how smart is or great is this person to recognize how great and smart I am?
That's a good point. Yeah.
But that is actually, like kind of like a Trojan horse where you should be very careful whenever somebody comes off strongly with compliments.
Yep.
Gut feel again, like I went through this cycle of, like, no, just go completely rational, switch off the gut feel, and now I'm going back into like switch on your gut feel.
Right.
I think coming from like just the culture where I grew up was more a judgmental culture.
Tell me about it.
I know it's shock, but believe it or not, it's
you literally made many earthquakes so they could feel it.
It's a judgmental culture, and I like when I came to New York, I had that mindset quite a bit, but like also like I've learned to adapt through like living in London and India.
Yeah.
And after a while, you say like, no, I have to be open-minded. So you go into this mode of like, no, accept new things, accept, like things, but like some of these things that you accept are really acceptable. Some of these things that you accept are red flags.
Yeah. Good point.
And again, you choose to ignore them for the sake of like, no, I don't want to be that judgmental. I don't want to be that person who's like closed mindset, fixed mindset.
Yeah.
But in reality, no, these are just like real red flags.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's telling you that, like, oh, I'm using that person for what I need, and they are your friend. Ask yourself, is that how they feel about you? Are they talking about you that way to somebody else?
Right.
That is a red flag. Unless, like you have a very utilitarian approach with that person, you're like, no, this is a transactional relationship.
Yeah.
So again, being open, having open eyes to red flags. And like when you see them and when that's kind of like in line with your gut feel, react.
Yes.
If your red flags and your gut feel are disconnected, explore. Ask them questions like, oh, what makes you say that? What do you mean exactly? I love that question. What do you mean exactly?
I like that because it's like how they're gonna react to that question.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I don't want to give too much away, but for the next Align experience on June 7th, we're actually gonna have a session on intuition and discernment because I think a lot of us are oftentimes in our head and we don't pick up what our body is sensing for us. But when you mentioned like the gut versus the mind, right? You're like deciding what's reading between the lines. When you hone into that, it becomes very clear. And I think the biggest thing is it's more about instinct. When it comes about intuition, it's instinct. It's like the initial first thought. And it's always like a whisper and it's very like calm. It's not like alarm bells, like your body wants to protect you. It would never want to like freak you out, right? So I think another thing about intuition and discernment is when you have like say a lot of trauma or you've lived in a more, I would say, traumatic past, sometimes you're just naturally in fear mode. That's not intuition. So I think that's a really good point, like deciding between the two. You took my point about when someone compliments too much. That was my absolute first red flag, right? I would again apply this back to dating.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a red flag if somebody is just like super sweet person.
Wait, but for the whole time they first met
Yeah,
you?
but that's like it has to be put into context. If
Right.
somebody is just like a very sweet person to everyone and they're so bubbly,
Yeah.
then it's not a red flag. But if it feels like it's targeted,
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, question mark,
Yeah.
why?
But I also, here's the thing, I agree with you, but here's the thing. There can be people who come off bubbly, but they're actually trying to flatter everyone to get ultimately what they want as a transaction.
And I think that then it goes back to the gut feel.
Yes.
And like register, because like, we all do micro expressions.
Yes. Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like somebody can be like fake bubbling, like, everybody knows that experience, like walking into a restaurant and, like the host or the hostess is like on their phone, like, like just having a neutral face. And then you walk in and they see you and, like by training, they start smiling and say, hi, like welcome. It's not a genuine smile. It's fine. It's better genuine. Like,
Right.
it's better to have that than like a frown.
Rude. Yeah.
Like, why are you,
Hello.
why are you here? But more importantly, like when somebody is fake bubbly,
Yeah.
they will do that. They'll be like, hey, and then they will turn around and have just like this neutral face
Yes.
where you see that bubbliness and you may register it with the edge of your eye and it registers in your gut feel, but you don't rationally register it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but I would say definitely the too much flattery, too much flattery too quickly. And again, I apply this back to dating. I remember like, when you go on a first date or second date and like sometimes guys or girls like overdo it to try to like sell themselves a bit. I also, they call it, I guess, love bombing. I've always been so sad, even before love bombing was a thing. Maybe like for a lot of people, like, oh, it's so nice to feel so like flattered. They think so highly of me. What I think is like, you don't even know me. You literally just met me. How could you say all these things about me? Do you know what I mean?
Maybe they were creeping through and like doing like all of the research about you in the background, but like, sure.
Fair. But then that's also a little bit weird, but it's a little bit too, like you ran a whole PI before you even got here. That's a little bit much. But I think that's a really good point. Another point I would add is some people don't necessarily like you or want to be friends with you. Some people want to be you. Some people like the lifestyle that you have. They love how people love you. They love your access. Like they literally want your life. And I think a really big tell, personally for me, is when I meet new people and the flattery, and then it's just a lot of probing questions all the way down to, this is not a coaching session. It's not like they're paying me to coach me and ask me for this. That's different, right? Like that becomes a business transaction, and I'm here to help you. I'm here to answer questions like, and also get your business or your life the way you want to be. But asking very pointed questions about how I build my business, all about my past relationships, like how I get my health.
What did you put in your tax return?
Literally, like all these details.
What size of shoes do you wear?
Right, like all these details that I'm like, you have not entered the VIP room to answer those questions.
And I think like genuinely people who are in your like VIP friend room are not going to ask you, what did you put in your tax returns?
No.
I mean, like, it's not a natural question.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's like even you guys who are so close, we would never. And also for me, I share so many close things to my so many personal things to my close friends. Like no one asks me, like I just tell you, right? So I think that's a really huge tell, like truly, like, and don't think of it's a cocky thing, like, oh my God, so good to see, I think people want to be me. There are people out there that want to be you and they want your life. And if you're a good person, you just naturally track goodness in you. That's why I really think it's important to be a good person and also have boundaries and be discerning, because your energy is better spent on people who are going to do more good with your energy versus extract.
On the boundaries point, I just want to add one thing, which I think is also great. And it's when people cross the boundaries and ask you to do things that you are not comfortable with.
Thank you.
But you're like, it's a good person. I do want to tell them, I do want to help them. But in reality, it's, like it's crossing the boundaries question. So like, okay, different cultures, different points, but like back home in Serbia, like asking somebody how much are you making is a relatively more normal question than here.
Okay.
But then, like I lived here for a while and I went back home and, like a friend asked me like, oh yeah, but like, how much are you making? And you should feel comfortable. If you don't feel like that's something you want to share, especially in public, he asked me that at a dinner with like other friends. It's just to say like, I don't think it's appropriate for me to share that, or I'm not comfortable sharing that information.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine.
Yes.
Don't feel like you owe it to somebody just because they're in your circle to answer any question that they ask you. They can ask you a very deep personal question that you don't want to answer, and the best answer to that is like, I prefer not to answer that.
Perfect.
It's just very simple and clear.
Yeah.
I prefer not to answer that. Don't lie to them. Don't give them like, like fake, like, oh, white lies or whatever. Like, oh, I forgot, or I don't know. Like,
How much I made. I so forgot how much I made. I don't know, a million a day.
It just comes into my bank account. I don't even know. I don't check. But like, just saying like, hey, I don't want to share that.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's you setting the boundaries.
Yeah. Speaking of doing things that are not comfortable, which is so good. Another flag, and I'm laughing because it's happened to me before, is when someone, even like a close friend, expects all the favors to be done. Like whatever they ask of you, they're going to do it. Or like expects to be a part of your whole life. I'll give you an example. I had a former friend where literally she would throw a fit when I was invited somewhere and she wasn't, like, I didn't tell her about it or wasn't invited to her. And I remember like the first time like it happened, I was like, yo, homegirl, my sister, my own blood sister doesn't even cause a fit when I don't invite her everywhere. Like, it's just not normal. It felt more like, yo, are we dating? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, even if I had a boyfriend, would never expect me to bring him everywhere with him, right?
It's a little bit of an emotional blackmail.
Yeah, exactly. Emotional blackmail. And it's more like, oh, like I would just say if someone constantly feels like they're entitled to like your resources, your relationships, your life, that's also a red flag. And that's not even for new friendships, it's also for old friendships.
Yeah, I would put it like, you set the boundaries.
Yeah.
If that person understands those boundaries, perfect. It can happen once and fine. Like you can close out the chapter.
Yeah.
You don't have to revisit that point. But if it happens, like in different shapes and forms, then there is misalignment of, like approaches or values.
Yeah, 100%. And then the last thing I would say, how can you tell with a new relationship is genuine or not? And this happened many times, always happens to be more like not alert, it just comes up more now. When people are more excited to hang out with you, to be in a certain scene around your people, than genuinely spend time with you. I'll give you an example. I'll be like catching with a girlfriend, a new girlfriend, or a small group of girls, and it's supposed to be like girls' dinner, right? So we're like catching up on like we're supposed to. I don't know, 30 minutes in, the attention goes, oh, should we sit there? Like, there's more guys there. Like, oh, like, is blah, 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 your friend going? Like, oh, are we go? It became more of like, and I think a lot of like women know, like, I have a lot of amazing guy friends in my life, and I have a lot of amazing clients in my life. And I just feel like it became more about extracting the resources of relationship around me than actually genuinely caring about building a friendship. I think that's, I would say, an easier sign to tell, but again, don't feel like you're entitled to open up all your resources and all your relationships, especially when like it's not mutual. And that happens a lot to me where like a guy or a girl wants to meet like guys or girls through me. And I'm like, yo, some people just may not be interested, right? So yeah, I think that's another sign, a clear sign. Um, so let's move on to now how to discern when a new relationship is actually a genuine one. So, what are some signs for you? That's the last. Yeah, that's the last
Yeah,
part.
I'm thinking like of an example
Yeah.
of a friend who, like I met recently, but I feel like now, like I understand the person very well,
Yeah.
even though we've only, like had like deep conversations a couple of times.
Okay.
And I think it's when you hear them talk about experiences in their life,
Mm-hmm.
about how they treated people, about like openly stating things where it doesn't put them in the best light, right? Like saying
Yeah.
like, hey, at this point, I made a huge mistake
Yeah, I
and I've
agree.
done this and it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like being, like emotionally open to what they were experiencing, like instead of just, like trying to put a facade of like constantly successful, like
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
like just crush after crush, win after win, because we all know if you want to succeed in life, it's not a crush after crush,
No.
it's not win after win.
No.
There are so many falls in between,
Oh my
obstacles,
God. Yeah.
and the people who I find are like the most real about their lives, about
Mhm.
like their experiences, they will say, like I felt really bad at that point. It
Yeah.
was really a low point. It was really hard to go through this experience. And then like, okay, fine. They are being like open.
Yeah.
And as you hear them talk about these things, you can just see their values play out
Yeah.
in their past events.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, it's their interpretation, right? I think you and I had this discussion about, like a guy that you met who kind of like said all of these things about like all of his exes being, it's always their fault.
Oh, yeah. 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 Oh my God. Yeah.
So, like every story that he had, it was like, well, but that person kind of like did bad things to him and
Yeah.
like he was a victim
Yeah.
of all of these things. It's like either it's not really true that you were always a victim, or like, well, maybe you're not like doing the right decisions. When you meet a genuine person who is giving you, like they're going to give you a mix of good, bad, ugly, beautiful,
Yeah.
all of these experiences in their life. And I think it's, like you just feel natural
Yeah.
sharing yours as well.
Yeah.
And you leave that conversation feeling like that is a good person.
Yeah.
I can see that, like they wish well,
Yes.
not just to me, but to other
Or
people as
people.
well.
Yeah.
Not just because, like, oh, they think I have some resources or network or
Right.
whatever, but I've seen them like that with other people as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of like say, like, okay, like there are these, like small green flags along the way.
Yeah.
And then, like you can just explore further.
Yeah. I agree. Um, yeah, for me, so I think for me, it's also like our friendship, right? So for context, I think the biggest thing that I would always say is first impressions are not always right. I'm really big on that, right? Because I feel like you have your own perception of people, they have their own, and also like cultural backgrounds, also the setting, right? So when we first met, we told this, we both are aware of the story, but the audience isn't. When I first met you, I literally could not wait to get rid of you. I was like, get this guy away from me. I was like trying to ship you off to my sister just because you still remember the interaction, and like I felt like you were trying to be jokey and like being funny, but the joke wasn't landing.
I wouldn't say I was trying. I was succeeding, but like, it wasn't landing
It was
well with
not,
you.
yeah, it
It
was,
maybe it maybe it maybe the audience wasn't interpreting it well, but sure.
yeah, it was just not landing. I mean, you basically made fun of me for being a coach. I forgot you said something, and I was like, well, fuck this guy. I'm just not gonna talk to him anymore. And I think the rest of the night too was just I just felt like I told you this. I thought you were like very cocky and just annoying, right? The humor wasn't landing. Anyway, it's fast,
Never heard that
right?
before. This is
Never in
the
your life.
first time I'm hearing this.
There. Um, and then so a couple months went on, and like I would say we were just new budding friends, right? Like we hung out in groups here and there. And then for me, we were just at the time acquaintances. I don't think we were like getting to know, we were not close yet. And I was away traveling for a friend's birthday, and I went to Montenegro as one of the spots. And when I was sexually assaulted, I remember being in my hotel room after like reporting it to the front desk and all that fun stuff. I remember being there and being like, the answer can't just be waiting in the morning when the manager comes. Like it just didn't feel right. But I was also in a very like a fear, vulnerable mode. Like I was in shock mode. Something in my gut was like, call Petar. It was like, I don't know, 1 a.m. or something really late in the evening in Europe. You picked up, and I'll never forget, you were obviously out doing your thing that night, and you picked up and you like dropped whatever you were doing and like handled it with me. Like we even thought about calling the police and like running through the scenarios. I think when that happened, to me, I was like, that's a genuine friend, right? And then there's many other scenarios after that I'm like, wow, he really showed up. And I think it also made me realize what I should expect of my guy friends. Like, and for you, you even said like that was just normal for you. Like that's
Yeah.
what a person should
Yeah.
do, you know? So I think I would just say when someone shows up for you in a time when you're obviously in need or down, I think that's obviously really clear tell. And just to be open to it, right? Like instead of me being like, oh, we're not that close, like I like something in my gut was like just call him, like, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, and I think that's just one example. I'm like, wow, my initial impression was obviously wrong. And yeah, you've obviously showed up for me many times since then.
So you're saying because of that experience, you no longer think I'm arrogant or cocky, and you think
Well,
my sense of humor is amazing.
that's pushing it, but it's definitely not a lot better. Now I know where you're coming
This is
from.
my interpretation of it. So
Right. Well, that another part I would say, and I think also our friendship too, to your point about being natural, there's no rush or urgency. I feel like when someone is transactional and wants something out of you, like there's always like a rush, like trying to get to a destination with you. I think with our friendship, it was just like really organic. Like there was never any pressures, like, hey, come out here or come out there. That for me is also a telltale sign that it's more genuine.
yeah. No, I look, I agree. Obviously, like not like it's bad you had to go through that
Mhm.
experience in life. Like we don't know why it was, like something that was on your path
I
to
actually do know why.
okay,
I
tell
had
me.
to experience it. Few things. It was honestly to show me what a true friendship, how a true friendship should show up for me when I would say some of my relationships and my current, and when I was meeting you, wasn't showing up for me the way that you were at a time that I really needed someone, especially a man, to like rise up to the occasion. Secondly, it was also like empowering me to like use my voice and stop being a nice girl. Cause like, even as, yes, I'm very outspoken, all this stuff, but like when something like that happens to you, your natural gut reaction as a woman is like you blame yourself. And I even like, I think I told you this, so the audience doesn't know. I'll give you an example. When it happened to me, so it was in a five-star hotel massage parlor, and like a man touched me inappropriately, like inappropriate areas. I remember getting out of there and my body froze. I didn't know your body could freeze in trauma. I thought it was fight or flight, you know? That was that's what I learned your body could freeze. When I got out of there, I remember laying in bed and like Googling it, being like, is it normal to touch your like private? Because I thought maybe it was like a cultural thing. You start rationalizing because you don't want you assume good in the other person. He was a young boy. Like he was probably he looked like he was 18 to 22, very young boy. I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, right? I was literally Googling it. I was like trying to rationalize it to the point where I called the front desk at the spa, and it was a woman that picked up. And I was like, hey, like, I'm just checking. I just had a massage. Like, is it part of the massage for like a man to touch you in like your boot, your area? And she goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, that's not normal. And that's when it hit me. So I think what I learned from that is you gotta stand up for yourself. You gotta use your voice, and like enough is enough. It's also like not so much already happened to me. It's also more protecting women going forward. But it had to happen. I embrace it. I forgive the person, but like I really do believe everything happens in your life to like get you to the next level. So yeah, now I'm like, if knock on wood, if anything like that were to happen again, I'm fully prepared.
You'll karate chop them.
I'll cry shut them. And also like the number of women I've shared this with that have come forward and have like healed from it, right? I can only heal people or help, not heal people, like help people on the journey because I've been through it. And now I know how people react and how we can get through it. Like in a court system, how would it play out? So yeah, I appreciate you saying I'm sorry. And of course, no one wants that to happen, but I am thankful it happened. Forgiveness.
Okay.
Sorry,
Well,
back to your
yeah,
question.
it made me forget about my point. So,
You're like something about hold on, we gotta think. Something about like um uh, something about you're sorry that it happened. I would always say, oh, when people try to push things along, like uh getting something out of you, it's always like rushing you from point to point B. Our friendship was more evolving organically. You're gonna say something about that.
I think I lost the point, but we can move on to the like I can't remember what was
No,
the
it's
point I
okay.
tried to make.
And then I would say the one last thing about like how you can tell a friendship is genuine. Do they view this as the same thing? Oh, I mean, it's just not obvious always, but like, how do they feed their time? How do they use their time, right? Does it align with the way you use their time? Basic things like, do they spend more of their time gossiping or talking to other people? Or like, are they more like focused on learning and growing a business, a passion, or something? I think it's like when you're getting rid of or slowly exiting older relationships, think about how your next relationships can actually upgrade your life. And it's a win-win, right? Like, for example, even like the two sisters that I met through you recently, such good vibes. Adora and I, like we showed up to the women's event, such good vibes. Adora and I can't wait to hang out with them one on one, like two and two, so to speak. But yeah, it's like we are very growth oriented. We're very business oriented. We immediately think about ways that we can like help each other, you know? So yeah, I would say, are you guys all going the same direction? I think that's a pretty clear sign.
I agree.
But I think it's a good like overview of how to get like discern if old relationships are no longer fit, and then B, how to tell when a relationship that's new is actually good versus transactional. Anything, Petar, that we did not cover that you want to share, a story, final thoughts?
I really think that most people know
Yeah,
in your gut,
we know.
if you go through, like list of like 10 friends that are the
Yeah.
closest to you, and you think about each person individually,
Mhm.
all of us have flaws, all of us have, like amazing sides to us. But in terms of just thinking about that connection between two people, not
Yeah.
like, is that person amazing? It's like, is this
Mhm.
connection between two people, between me and that person, working well?
Yeah.
Because I can think they're an amazing person, just not somebody that should be in my life
Yeah.
personally. But like when you think about that, if you close your eyes and think about like all of these things,
Yeah.
like the gut feel, the past events, the alignment between what they say and what they do,
Yeah.
and like I think most of us know the the energy to act,
Yeah.
to actually say, you know what, I'm doing this by inertia.
Yes.
I'm still investing in this friendship or in this relationship with this person. That part, I think, like just being honest with yourself and then saying, you know what, it actually should not happen going forward.
Mm.
And again, the reason I think why we mostly, like either it's optimism or using optimism that that person is like actually better. We've just seen some
Yeah.
bad sides, or using optimism as an
Mm.
excuse to not go through this first phase of a painful process of
Mm.
detanglement,
Yeah.
which is emotionally painful if you care about the person, and then, like leaving space for new people. If I did not leave space for new people, if I kept hanging on to
Mm.
all of my friends from elementary school, high school, university,
Yeah.
etc., like even when I knew the friendship wasn't working, I would not have enough space to meet you, to meet
Yeah.
Russell, to meet other people that are in my life who are amazing people.
Yeah.
So I think it's that part of like, yes, it's the price you have to pay.
Yeah.
That like small emotional hump
Yeah.
of the pain to be able to leave space for something that's more aligned with you.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say if there is hesitation to let go of a relationship in the past, I ask you the question, are you in a way trying to get something out of this friendship that you're not willing to let go of? Right. And that's okay. It's okay. I think you should be honest with yourself. Like maybe there's a business deal that's riding on the line, or maybe there's like, I don't know, your girlfriend's dating her brother's friend who is always around. Maybe there is an element that you don't want to, like, you love parts of that relationship that you don't want to let go. Just own that and just know, like, okay, it's not fully genuine anymore. Just be aware of it, right? It's
Yeah.
okay.
And
Like,
be honest with yourself. It's a little bit more transactional. It's not
yeah,
a friend, it's more like an acquaintance
correct,
or a business connection or however,
correct.
maybe categorizing in your mind a
Yeah.
little bit better or compartmentalizing that it's not like a real true friendship,
Right.
which is fine.
Totally
We
fine.
have to have that as well. We can't
100%.
just be like surrounded by like amazing close friends and then everybody else is like
Exactly.
non-existent.
Yeah, I think it's just levels to it. So love that. Thank you, Petar. And I just want to say, I want to first honor you for being open. I know sometimes you're not really always the most open person. So thank you for being open so people can learn from it. And then secondly is just thank you for always being such a genuine, open friend. Like I truly feel like I can tell you everything and more than you'd want to know sometimes.
So many times. It's more than I want to know.
Way too many details. But I appreciate you no matter what. You're always supportive. You're always there. And I know you know this. I always have your back.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And thank you.
Yeah.
First, thank you for inviting me. Thank you
Of
for
course.
saying those nice things. Whether you believe
Really
them or
rare.
whether you
Really
believe
Take it.
really believe them or not.
Take it and run.
I have it recorded.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, remember you said this.
You're a good friend too.
Thank
Who
you.
would have guessed?
Yes. Again, there's no force. No one's paid to say this. Don't worry.
But long story short, like yes, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. So I think it's a great experience. It's like it's very natural.
Oh yeah, how do you feel?
It's a very natural, friendly conversation. A little bit unnatural with the lights.
Are not great.
Yeah. But aside from that, really good experience.
Awesome. I'm proud of you. Until next time.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.